On the hot and dry planet of Zyron 9, there lived an alien named Tarakel. She wasn't like the other aliens of her planet. She was massive, bigger than any other creature in the galaxy. Her skin was a deep shade of red, glowing with an almost fiery heat. Her eyes were a glowing yellow, bright and dangerous. On her homeworld, most people feared her. The men avoided her. The women whispered behind her back. Tarakel was not like the others. She was strong, powerful, and fierce. Many said she was the most beautiful of them all, but that didn't matter to her. She had learned to ignore the insults, the mockery, and the loneliness that came with being so different. No alien dared approach her. They thought she was too hot to touch, too big to love. They were all afraid of what they couldn't understand. Even the alien males, who were strong and proud, avoided her. They would whisper, "She's too big, too hot. No one can handle her." They feared her power, her strength, and her size. But Tarakel wasn't angry about it. She had learned to live with the loneliness. She spent her days walking alone across the great desert of Zyron 9, looking at the burning sky and wondering why she was different. Then one day, something strange happened. While walking near the ruins of an old shipwreck, Tarakel saw something unusual. A ship, a tiny human ship, was crashing toward the planet. She had never seen a human ship before. She was used to the ships of her own kind, the great alien cruisers, but this was something different. The small ship tumbled through the sky, sparks flying. Tarakel could see that it was heading straight for her. Without thinking, she rushed forward, her powerful legs moving fast across the desert. The ship hit the ground with a loud crash, sending a cloud of sand into the air. Tarakel stood over the wreckage. The smoke cleared and she looked down. Inside the wrecked ship was a human, badly hurt but alive. He was a man, small and fragile compared to her towering frame. His clothes were torn and his face was covered in dirt and blood. But his eyes were wide open and he was looking at her. Tarakel stood tall, towering over him like a mountain, but she didn't feel the usual fear she got from others. She didn't know why, but something about this human was different. The human man slowly moved, struggling to stand. Tarakel could see he was in pain, but he didn't seem afraid of her. His eyes never left hers, and for the first time in a long while, Tarakel felt something stir inside her chest. This human, he wasn't scared. The man managed to stand, his face twisted in pain. Tarakel stared down at him, her eyes glowing bright yellow in the darkness of the desert. "You're alive," Tarakel said, her voice a low growl, but there was a hint of something softer in it. "Why aren't you afraid of me?" The human man looked up at her, and instead of fear, he smiled. It was a small smile, but it was there. A simple, honest smile. Tarakel was confused. No one had ever smiled at her like that. No one ever dared. The men on her planet had always looked at her with fear in their eyes. They saw her as a threat, as something too big, too strong, too different. But this human, he smiled. "I'm not afraid of you," the man said, his voice tired but calm. "Why should I be afraid of someone as beautiful as you?" Tarakel blinked, surprised. No one had ever called her beautiful. The words felt strange in her ears. She had heard many insults in her life, but never something like that. She didn't know what to say. No alien had ever looked at her like this. "Who are you?" she asked. The man's smile grew a little bigger. "I'm Ethan Cole," he said. "A traveler. From Earth." Tarakel had never heard of Earth, but it didn't matter. She didn't care about where he was from. What mattered was that he wasn't scared of her. Ethan's eyes scanned the wreckage of his ship. "Looks like my ship's done for," he said. "But I'm not afraid. I've seen worse things than fire and dust, and right now I think I just need to rest, and maybe a little company, if you don't mind." Tarakel tilted her head. She didn't understand why, but something in her heart stirred. She had never had someone ask for her company before. She had always been alone. But here now, standing with this small, fragile human, she didn't feel so alone. "I can help you," Tarakel said quietly. She extended a hand toward him, and to her surprise, Ethan reached up, taking her massive finger in his hand. His hand was tiny, barely able to wrap around her finger. But it was the first time in years someone had touched her willingly. As she lifted him from the ground, she realized that maybe there was more to her than just strength. Maybe there was something else she could offer, and maybe, just maybe, this human would help her discover it. The desert air was still thick with the scent of burning wreckage as Tarakel gently cradled Ethan in her enormous hand. Her glowing eyes looked down at him, puzzled. She had never felt this way before. It was strange. This human, small and fragile, had made her feel something she never expected. Something warm, something soft. She stared at him for a moment, trying to make sense of the feeling swirling inside her chest. No one had ever dared speak to her like this. No alien, no creature had ever looked at her and smiled. Everyone feared her. Even her own people treated her like a weapon, something dangerous and untouchable. But this human, this tiny being, had smiled at her. Ethan didn't seem afraid of her size, her power, or even her intense burning heat. He just smiled. And it confused her. Why aren't you afraid of me? Tarakil's voice was low, heavy with curiosity. Ethan shifted in her palm, his eyes still sparkling with that strange smile. Why should I be? You're not dangerous to me. I can tell you're different from the others. Tarakil raised an eyebrow. Different? She had never been called different in a good way. Her whole life she had been told she was too much, too powerful, too big, too fierce. Even the men on her planet had shunned her, calling her a monster or worse. They thought that because of her size she couldn't possibly understand kindness or love. I'm not like them, she said quietly, almost to herself. I'm not like you. I'm too big, too hot, too much. Ethan laughed softly, the sound almost like music to her ears.
He didn't seem to see her as a monster.
I think you're perfect just the way you are, he said. Tarakil blinked, almost too stunned to respond. This human was unlike any creature she had ever encountered. No one had ever said such things to her. She lowered her hand and carefully set him down on the ground. He was so small compared to her, but there was something in his eyes, a kind of quiet strength, the same strength she saw in herself. But Ethan's strength wasn't in his size. It was in his heart. She crouched down to get closer to him. Who are you, really? She asked again, her voice soft but filled with wonder. No one has ever treated me like this. What do you see in me? Ethan looked up at her with a thoughtful expression. I see a warrior. I see someone who's been alone for too long, someone who just wants to be understood. You're not a monster. You're stronger than anyone I've ever met. Tarakil felt her chest tighten. She had heard praise before, but not like this. No one had ever seen her strength and power as something beautiful. They saw it as a weapon, something to fear. But Ethan? He saw something entirely different. I've never been treated like this, Tarakil said, almost too quietly for him to hear. Everyone has always been afraid of me. Even my own people. They think I'm too much. Ethan shook his head, his gaze soft and sincere. Maybe they're just scared. But you shouldn't be alone, Tarakil. You're not too much. You're everything. For the first time in a long time, Tarakil felt something stir inside her. Could it be possible? Could she truly be more than what everyone else saw her as? She stepped back, glancing at the wreckage of his ship. The sand was still settling around them, and the remains of the ship were nothing but a broken heap of metal. She felt a pang of guilt. She had wanted to help, but what could a giant alien like her do? The ship was beyond repair, but Ethan didn't seem bothered. He looked up at her with a calm, understanding expression. It's okay, he said. I've got other ways of getting by. Besides, now that you've saved me, I think I owe you something. I'm not leaving without helping you. Tarakil stared at him in confusion. What can you possibly help me with? You're just a human. You can barely even stand in my shadow. Ethan smiled, that same warm smile, the one that had started it all. You'd be surprised. We humans have a lot of tricks up our sleeves. He gave a small chuckle despite his tiredness. And besides, I think it's time someone showed you the real you. The words hit her hard. She had never thought of herself like that before. She had always thought she was just a force of nature, something to be feared. But this human, this small, fragile man, believed in her. What do you mean? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan's smile widened, though he looked exhausted. I mean, I see you. I see your strength. I see your heart. And I see someone who doesn't need to be alone anymore. Tarakil felt a warmth spread inside her chest. This human, this stranger, had seen something in her that no one else had ever noticed. He had treated her as a person, not a monster, not a weapon. He had treated her as an equal. For the first time, she didn't feel so alone. The next morning, the winds had shifted, carrying the scent of sand and dust through the air. Tarakil stood tall, her glowing red skin bright against the pale, endless sky of Xiron 9. Ethan was still asleep in the shade of a nearby rock, exhausted from the crash and his injuries. She watched over him, her thoughts racing. Could he really see something in her that no one else had? The day was peaceful for the moment. No warships, no enemies. just the strange feeling of companionship that stirred within her chest. She had never known this kind of feeling before, the feeling of being needed, being wanted, being seen. But that peaceful moment didn't last long. From the edge of the desert, a small group of alien males appeared, their heavy footsteps echoing across the sand. They were members of Tarakel's colony, sent to find her after she had disappeared. They had heard the rumors about the human male, and they didn't like it. They didn't like the idea of a human anywhere near their prized warrior. One of them, a tall, muscular alien named Raxnar, stepped forward, his eyes narrowing at the sight of Ethan. "Tarakel," he called out, his voice booming. "What is this? Why have you brought a human to our land?" Tarakel stiffened. She had never been challenged like this before. She had always been the strong one, the one who was too big to defy. But now in front of her, Ethan was different. He wasn't afraid, and Tarakel wasn't afraid either. No one would take him from her. "He's not a threat," Tarakel said firmly, standing her ground. Her glowing eyes flashed a hint of fire in her voice. "He is my guest," Raxnar scoffed, his eyes scanning Ethan with disdain. "Your guest? A human?" He stepped closer, his tall form towering over the small human who was still asleep, unaware of the situation. "He's a weakness. You know that. This human will bring nothing but trouble." Tarakel's voice grew colder. "You don't know him. You know nothing about him." Raxnar's gaze flickered toward the other aliens who were standing behind him, their eyes filled with the same skepticism. "We know enough. Humans are weak. They don't belong here, Tarakel. You are too important to waste your time with a creature so insignificant." For a moment, Tarakel's anger boiled within her. No one had ever spoken to her like this, not in years. Not since she had been made the leader of her colony. But something inside her shifted. She was tired of being spoken to like she was a weapon, a tool, something to be controlled. "I am not a weapon, Raxnar," Tarakel said, her voice soft but fierce. "I am not your tool to command. I am not anyone's tool, and Ethan is not a weakness. He is more than all of you put together." The silence that followed her words was heavy. Raxnar glared at her, his face filled with disbelief. He had never seen Tarakel so defiant, so unwilling to bow to anyone. But it didn't matter. His pride and hatred were too strong. "He will bring nothing but danger to us, Tarakel," Raxnar said, his voice low and threatening. "If you continue to protect him, you will be forced to choose between him and us." Tarakel felt a surge of anger, but also a strange feeling of clarity. She had been alone for so long. The idea that these aliens, these so-called friends, would ask her to choose between them and a human who saw her for who she truly was, hurt her in a way she couldn't explain. For the first time, she saw the truth. "I don't need to choose, Raxnar," she said firmly, her voice strong. "I've already made my choice." Raxnar's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Then you are making a mistake, Tarakel. And when the humans cause you pain, don't come crying to us." With that, Raxnar turned and marched away, his followers trailing behind him. Tarakel stood there for a long time, her mind racing. Was she really making a mistake? When Ethan woke up, he found Tarakel still standing, her gaze fixed on the horizon. The weight of what had just happened hung in the air like a cloud, but Ethan didn't seem concerned. He walked over to her, a gentle smile on his face. "Everything okay?" he asked, his voice soft and reassuring. Tarakel didn't know how to explain the anger and confusion she felt. "They don't understand," she said, her voice quiet. "They want me to choose between you and them." Ethan nodded, understanding. "And you don't have to choose." "You've already chosen." Tarakel's heart fluttered at his words. "But I've never been in this situation before. I've never had to make such a choice." "You don't have to," Ethan said, his smile growing. "The choice is yours. And I think you've made it." For the first time, Tarakel felt something that had been missing for a long time. Peace. She wasn't alone. She didn't have to choose between her people and Ethan. They could both be her world. As the winds of the desert began to pick up again, Tarakel looked at Ethan, his small, fragile form standing beside her, and realized he had become something more than a companion. He was her ally, her friend, and maybe, just maybe, something more. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time she wasn't afraid. Days passed, and the atmosphere on Xiron 9 grew tense. The whispers from the colony only grew louder. Tarakel felt the weight of her choice pressing on her shoulders. Raxnar and the others had warned her, but she still didn't regret her decision to stand by Ethan. He wasn't just a human. He was different. More than that, he was the first one who had truly seen her. Not as a weapon, not as a tool, but as a person. Her heart, once filled with doubt, began to feel lighter. Ethan had become an anchor for her in ways she couldn't explain. Every day he showed her kindness, something she had never known much about. He smiled even when things were difficult. He didn't fear her strength or her size. He admired her. And most importantly, he treated her like she mattered. But Ethan had a secret he hadn't told her yet. Tarakel knew something was different about him, but she hadn't asked. Perhaps she had been afraid of what she might learn. It was on the fourth day that Tarakel's curiosity finally got the best of her. As they sat by the edge of the great desert watching the sun begin to set, she turned to him, her glowing eyes filled with questions. "Ethan," she said, her voice soft but serious, "there's something about you. Something I can't quite understand." Ethan looked at her, his face unreadable for a moment. Then he gave a small, almost sheepish smile. "I suppose I've been meaning to tell you." Tarakel's heart skipped a beat. This was it. The secret. What could he possibly be hiding? She braced herself, not sure whether she was ready to hear it. "I'm not just a traveler," Ethan began. "I'm a member of a human group called the United Human Federation." His voice was steady, but Tarakel could hear the faint edge of nervousness. "We're explorers, yes, but we also monitor and protect against threats in the galaxy. The Void Legion, for example. They're dangerous." Tarakel was silent for a moment, absorbing his words. "The Void Legion?" she repeated, a frown pulling at her features. "I've heard of them. They're a group of ruthless invaders. But what does that have to do with you?" Ethan's eyes met hers, and for the first time she saw a flicker of something deeper in his gaze. A burden. A truth he carried alone. "I was sent here on a mission, Tarakel," Ethan said, his voice more serious now. "To find allies. To find someone strong enough to fight the Void Legion." Tarakel's eyes widened, her mind racing. You mean?" Ethan nodded, his gaze never leaving hers. "Yes. The truth is, I came to Xiron 9 searching for someone with your strength. Someone who could help us in the fight against them. But I didn't expect to find you. I didn't expect you to be this person. I didn't expect to find someone who could change everything." Tarakel was stunned. She had been chosen, not because of who she was, but because of what she could offer. Had she been just another weapon? Another tool in someone's war? For the first time, she felt the weight of her power. And for the first time, she felt betrayed. Had Ethan been lying to her all along? Was everything just part of some mission? But Ethan's next words shattered the fear in her chest. "I didn't expect to find you the way I did," Ethan continued, his voice softer now. "When I first landed here, I didn't think I would meet someone like you. I didn't think I would care." Tarakel was silent. Her thoughts were a storm of confusion, but she couldn't ignore what she felt in her heart. He was telling the truth. The way he spoke, the way he looked at her, it wasn't just because of her strength. It was because of who she was. "I didn't expect to feel this way either," Ethan added, his eyes filled with honesty. "I didn't expect to find someone who made me want to fight for something more than just survival. I never expected to meet someone who could change my life." Tarakel's heart raced. Could this be true? Could Ethan really care for her? Not because of her power, but because of who she was? She took a deep breath, trying to steady her emotions. "But why didn't you tell me earlier?" she asked, her voice low. "Why didn't you tell me you were here to find allies?" Ethan's eyes softened, and he stepped closer to her. "Because I didn't want to lose what I found here," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. "I didn't want you to think I was just another soldier. You mean more to me than that." Tarakel stood there for a long time, her mind trying to process everything Ethan had said. She had never been part of anyone's plan. She had always been the one who did the protecting, the one who had to carry the burden alone. But now, for the first time, she saw that she wasn't alone. Ethan had seen her not as a weapon, but as a person. He wanted her for who she was, not for what she could do. "I don't know what the future holds," Tarakel said quietly, her voice full of emotion. "But I know one thing. I don't want to fight this battle alone." Ethan smiled, and this time it wasn't the smile of a traveler or a soldier. It was the smile of someone who had found something worth fighting for. "Then we won't," he said softly. "Together we'll face whatever comes next." And in that moment, Tarakel realized that her heart wasn't just full of strength. It was full of something else, something even stronger. The will to protect the people she loved and the person who had finally made her feel human. The winds of Xiron 9 carried an unusual chill now. The sun, once so fiery and intense, seemed to burn a little less. Tarakel and Ethan stood side by side, their thoughts heavy with the same understanding. The future was not a peaceful one. The Void Legion was coming, and there was no way to stop them alone. They had to fight together. Ethan had shared everything he knew about the Void Legion. They were a force of destruction, an army that showed no mercy. They had already taken several planets, leaving nothing but rubble in their wake. But Xiron 9 was different. Tarakel was stronger than any warrior the Void Legion had ever faced. And Ethan had the intelligence and tactics to fight a battle in ways the Legion never expected. But even with all their strength and knowledge, Tarakel knew the fight wouldn't be easy. She had spent most of her life protecting herself, hiding from the cruelty of the world. But now, for the first time, she had someone by her side. Someone who believed in her. Days turned into weeks as the plan took shape. Ethan used his connections with the United Human Federation to get supplies, reinforcements, and ships for the coming battle. Tarakel trained harder than ever before, pushing her body to its limits. The colony watched in awe as she grew stronger, and the alien males who had once mocked her now stood in silence, realizing they had underestimated her. Raxnar, who had once been her fiercest critic, came to her one day, his expression unreadable. "I was wrong," he said quietly, his tone laced with hesitation. "You were right to choose him. I see it now. We can't win without him." Tarakel didn't answer right away. She simply nodded. She had never expected to hear those words from Raxnar. But the time for pride and arrogance was over. They needed to unite. The Void Legion wouldn't care about their differences. As the first signs of the invasion appeared on the horizon, Tarakel and Ethan stood together on the cliff edge, overlooking the desert. The sky was streaked with purple and orange as the sun began to set. But there was no peace in the beauty. Ethan looked at her, his voice calm but full of urgency. "The first wave will hit in a few hours. We don't have much time." Tarakel's heart raced. The weight of the coming battle pressed down on her like a storm. But she had learned something in these last few weeks. She wasn't alone anymore. She had something to fight for. "I'm ready," she said firmly, her voice low but strong. "I've spent my whole life running from battles. I won't run anymore." Together they made their way to the heart of the colony, where the fighters had gathered. The air was thick with tension, but there was also a strange sense of hope. Hope that they could stand against the Void Legion. Tarakel looked around, her glowing eyes meeting those of the alien warriors who had once dismissed her. Now they looked at her with respect. "We fight together." Tarakel's voice rang out strong and clear. "We fight for our home, for our future." Raxnar stepped forward, his broad chest rising and falling with each breath. "We will follow you, Tarakel," he said. "Lead us and we will fight." Ethan stood beside her, his small figure almost swallowed by the crowd. But his presence was enough. His belief in her was enough. "We can do this," he said quietly, almost to himself. The sound of engines roaring in the distance cut through the air, followed by the sight of massive ships descending from the sky. The Void Legion had arrived. Their black ships, like shadows in the sky, blotted out the sun. The battle had begun. Tarakel's heart pounded as the enemy fleet landed. Thousands of soldiers spilled out of the ships, their dark armor gleaming in the fading light. They were massive, just like her, but they weren't alone. The Void Legion had brought machines, weapons that could cut through steel and burn the planet's very surface. They were ruthless, and they had one goal: to conquer everything in their path. But Tarakel didn't flinch. She stood tall, her eyes glowing brighter than ever. The fear that had once held her back was gone. Now it was replaced by something far stronger: determination. Ethan reached out, touching her arm gently. "You're not alone," he whispered. "We're in this together." Tarakel nodded, her gaze fixed on the enemy forces below. "Let's show them what it means to challenge us." The battle was fierce, louder than any storm Tarakel had ever known. The air crackled with energy as explosions filled the sky. Tarakel fought like a force of nature, her body moving with the strength and power she had always hidden from the world. The Void Legion wasn't prepared for her. They underestimated her, just like they had underestimated the humans. But it wasn't just Tarakel's strength that turned the tide. Ethan's tactics, his quick thinking, and his ability to anticipate the enemy's moves saved countless lives. Together they made an unstoppable team. Tarakel fought with all her might, smashing through enemy lines, her heat melting their weapons, and her fists crushing their machines. She could feel the power coursing through her, but she also felt something else. Something that made her stronger than she had ever been before. She wasn't fighting alone anymore. Hours passed, and the battle raged on, but the Void Legion began to falter. They hadn't counted on the unity of Tarakel and Ethan, and they hadn't counted on the power of a single human who believed in her. The enemy forces began to retreat, their ships slowly lifting off from the surface. Victory was within reach, but even as they pushed forward, the battle wasn't over. The final wave was coming, and Tarakel knew that this would be their hardest fight yet. She looked at Ethan, who stood beside her, battered but determined. He met her gaze, his expression calm and resolute. They would face it together. The air on Xiron 9 had grown heavy with smoke and the scent of burning metal. The battle that had raged for hours seemed to be coming to a standstill. Tarakel, though battered, still stood tall, her glowing red skin flickering with the remnants of her power. Ethan, too, was worn from the fight, but his determination never wavered. The enemy forces were beginning to retreat, but it wasn't over. The final wave of the Void Legion was coming, and Tarakel knew this battle would be the hardest. Standing on the edge of the battlefield, her eyes scanning the horizon, Tarakel felt a strange calm settle over her. The Void Legion would not defeat her. This planet, this home, was her last line of defense. She would not let it fall. Ethan approached her, his expression serious but resolute. Tarakel, we've done everything we can, but they're bringing in their command ship. This is the final push. She turned to face him, her glowing eyes meeting his. I know. I can feel it. She paused, her chest rising and falling with each deep breath. But we'll fight. We'll fight until there's nothing left to fight for. For a moment, Ethan just looked at her. There was something in her eyes, something deeper than just the warrior spirit he had come to admire. It was a mix of determination, strength, and a deep fear that she kept buried. The fear of losing everything. He placed his hand on her shoulder, his grip strong but gentle. You've led us this far. Now let me lead with you. Tarakel nodded, grateful for his words. She had never thought she would find someone to stand beside her, someone who would not only fight with her but believe in her. Together, she said simply, her voice carrying an unspoken promise. Together, we will end this. The final wave arrived as the last of the Void Legion's ships descended from the dark sky. The ground trembled beneath them and the air hummed with the power of their weapons. A massive command ship, larger than any ship Tarakel had seen before, landed at the center of the battlefield. From it emerged the commander of the Void Legion, a towering figure clad in dark armor, his eyes glowing with cold malice. He was unlike any enemy Tarakel had faced before. His size rivaled hers, his strength unmatched. But he had one weakness: he underestimated the heart of those who stood against him. And that was where she and Ethan would strike. The ground around them erupted as the Legion's soldiers charged forward, weapons raised. Tarakel and Ethan, side by side, took their places at the front of their forces. The soldiers of the colony, now united under Tarakel's leadership, charged with them. For Xiron 9, Tarakel shouted, her voice a battle cry that rang through the desert. Her words were not just a rallying cry for her people, but a declaration. They would not go down without a fight. The battle intensified. Tarakel fought like the force of nature she was, her massive fists crashing into enemy soldiers, her heat melting their weapons. Ethan moved with precision, guiding the colony's forces with the same tactics he had used before, leading them through the chaos and turning the tide in their favor. But the real challenge was yet to come. As the Legion's forces fell back, the Void Legion commander stepped forward, his dark armor gleaming under the shattered sun. He was tall, easily towering over Tarakel, but there was no fear in her eyes. She had faced monsters before, but this one was different. He wasn't just a warrior. He was the symbol of everything the Void Legion stood for. Tarakel, the commander's voice boomed, you and your weak human allies have no idea what you're up against. The Void Legion cannot be defeated by your strength or your tactics. You are nothing but ants beneath our boots. Tarakel's eyes glowed brighter and she stepped forward, her presence radiating power. We are not ants, she said, her voice steady and full of defiance. We are the heart of this planet, and we fight for our home. Without another word, the battle began again, but this time it was personal. Tarakel and the commander clashed in the center of the battlefield, their strength causing the ground to shake. Tarakel's massive form moved with unmatched speed, her fist colliding with the commander's armor, causing sparks to fly. But the commander was no easy foe. He countered every move with brutal force, his strength a match for hers. Ethan, seeing the battle unfold, moved quickly through the chaos. He knew he had to do something that would tip the scales in their favor. But he couldn't do it alone. He needed Tarakel. Tarakel! Ethan shouted, his voice cutting through the battle. The core. We have to hit the core of his armor. It's the only way to stop him. Tarakel heard him, and her eyes locked onto the commander's chest where a weak point in his armor glowed faintly. The core. Without hesitation, she changed her approach, aiming for the core with all her strength. With one powerful blow, her fist connected with the commander's chest, the impact sending shockwaves through the air. The armor cracked and the commander staggered back stunned. But it wasn't enough. The commander recovered quickly, raising his weapon to strike her down. Tarakel, exhausted but determined, pushed through her fatigue. She wasn't done yet. In that moment, Ethan charged forward, his small frame almost invisible among the larger soldiers. He reached the commander's side and with quick precision, he launched a final strike at the weak point in the commander's armor. A blinding light erupted from the impact. The commander's armor shattered, his power source destroyed. The Void Legion commander fell to the ground, his body collapsing in a heap. The battle was over. The Void Legion's forces, without their leader, scattered in disarray. Xiron 9 had won. Tarakel stood in the middle of the battlefield, breathing heavily but victorious. Ethan stood beside her, his expression filled with pride. They had done it. Together, they had saved her home, her people, and the future of their world. Tarakel looked down at him, her glowing eyes softening. We did it, Ethan smiled, his gaze never leaving hers. Together. The sun set over the ruined battlefield, casting long shadows across the desert sands of Xiron 9. The battle was won, but the cost had been high. Tarakel, though still standing tall, was bruised and bloodied from the fight. Her body was exhausted, but her heart was full. The colony, which had once feared and rejected her, now hailed her as a hero. And Ethan, the human who had stood by her side, was now more than just a companion. He was part of her story, part of her legacy. The sounds of celebration echoed through the settlement as the alien warriors, once uncertain of her, now cheered her name. Tarakel! Tarakel! The chant grew louder, spreading through the entire colony. The once feared warrior had become their symbol of hope, strength, and unity. Tarakel stood atop a stone platform, her chest rising and falling with each breath, her glowing skin still flickering with the power she had unleashed during the battle. But her thoughts were not on the cheers or the victory. Her mind kept drifting back to Ethan, the human who had shown her kindness when no one else had. The human who had believed in her when she had believed in nothing. Ethan stood beside her, his arm resting lightly on her shoulder. He too was tired, but his eyes were filled with the kind of quiet pride that only came from having fought for something worth fighting for. He had not only helped save the colony, but he had also helped her save herself. From the loneliness, from the fear that had held her back all her life. Tarakel turned to him, her voice soft but filled with emotion. Ethan, I never thought I'd find someone like you. Someone who sees me not as a weapon, but as someone who matters. Ethan smiled, his expression warm and genuine. You matter more than you know, Tarakel. You've always mattered. It just took someone to believe in you. Tarakel felt a knot in her chest, but this time it wasn't fear or confusion. It was something stronger, something she had never felt before, peace. She had spent her life running from others, hiding from her own power, from the idea that she could be more than what others saw her as. But with Ethan, she had found something new, someone who accepted her for who she truly was. Their quiet moment was interrupted by the arrival of Raxnar, the alien warrior who had once been Tarakel's harshest critic. He walked toward her, his steps slow and deliberate, his expression filled with respect. As he reached her, he bowed his head slightly. You were right, Tarakel, Raxnar said. I was wrong to doubt you. You are the heart of this world. You saved us all. Tarakel smiled, though her heart still carried a weight. She had always been the one who had to be strong, the one who had to lead. But now she knew that strength wasn't just about power. It was about connection. It was about believing in others and letting them believe in you. We all fought together, she said to Raxnar. Without all of you, we would not have won. This victory is ours, not mine. Raxnar nodded, and for the first time, Tarakel saw the respect in his eyes that had been missing for so long. You are a leader, Tarakel. You have become more than just a warrior. You've shown us what it means to stand together, to fight for something greater than ourselves. Ethan placed his hand on her shoulder again, giving her a small nod. Together, we're stronger. The celebration continued that night, but Tarakel and Ethan didn't join in the revelry. Instead, they walked quietly along the edge of the settlement, looking out over the barren desert. The sun had fully set, and the stars began to twinkle in the clear sky. The calm after the storm was almost surreal. For a long time, they didn't speak. They simply stood side by side, knowing that the world around them had changed forever. Tarakel looked down at Ethan, her glowing eyes softer than ever. What now? She asked, her voice filled with uncertainty, though there was no fear in it. Ethan turned to her, his eyes meeting hers with a look of quiet certainty. Now we build. We rebuild what was lost, and we do it together. Tarakel smiled, her heart finally full. She had spent so long fighting battles on her own, believing she was too different, too alone to ever fit in. But now she knew the truth. She wasn't alone anymore. She wasn't just a weapon. She wasn't just a giant, fierce alien who had to hide her heart. She was a leader. She was a protector. And with Ethan by her side, there was nothing she couldn't face. As they walked back toward the colony, hand in hand, Tarakel knew that the journey was far from over. There would be more battles to fight, more challenges to overcome. But now, with Ethan and her people behind her, she felt ready for whatever the future held. And so, the legend of Tarakel and the human who dared to smile back spread across the galaxy, a story of hope, strength, and the power of unbreakable bonds.